Jennifer, Dr. Boz here. We are live again Sunday night talking keto. Welcome, everybody. We are excited to be here on this Sunday night. We are excited always, as always, to be talking about the keto diet, the ketogenic way of life, whichever you want to call it. Recently, Dr. Boz and I were talking about there's so much bad keto talk about people talking bad about keto on the internet. Like, what the heck is going on? In fact, the most recent article that came out was from Maxim, a soft porn website. And it says how keto is bad for you. Who gets their news, sciencey news, from a website like Maxim? Let's just be honest. I cannot believe this has been the talk in a lot of the groups that I'm in. This has been the talk. Hey, Selma. Selma just jumped in. Selma is one of our faithful watchers, always jumps in. I love watching her journey. She's done amazing.
You know,
but anyway,
when it comes to news sources, you know, getting patients to read about their health has always been a challenge. But I will tell you that whenever Playboy would write about men's health, I would get article after article brought in, and it would be pulled out, but they matched. I'm like, I cannot believe how many men read about their health in Playboy.
Yeah, and women too, because there's a lot of women in our groups. Hi, Clau. Hi, Sylvia. Glad you can jump in and join us. Hey, if you're just tuning in, we love to hear where you're from. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Are you a beginner, intermediate, advanced? Maybe you could teach us a few things. Let us know. We just love to hear how we can help our viewers. We get a kick out of that, don't we, Boz?
Absolutely. You know what I was thinking about when I was looking at that article from Maxim, because there were probably three major sources that I had this past week of kind of raining on the parade of keto, saying, "Oh, Dr. Boz, I just listened to this." All right, you know, one was a YouTube, one was this article, and they were really concerned. Like, I get that a couple of them I met at that metabolic health conference, which is like really sciencey. And they said, "Can you just help me relax my anxiety about this?"
Yeah.
And it's almost like some of the articles are from when I first learned about keto and all of the fears that I had about cholesterol and heart disease and, you know, ketoacidosis. I mean, some of what I think of as very newbie mistakes, like you do not understand what you're talking about. You also have just a snippet of information. There's a couple of articles out there where they said, "Oh, the life expectancy is shorter," and I'm thinking, first of all, that cannot be. When you read about it, it is a very limited amount of patients, but it's also they're extrapolating from some numbers that it doesn't worry me one bit. It doesn't change any of the advice that I've been giving or continue to give. But what it does do is it circulates the energy from, like, you and I spend most of my time not like putting down the Jillian Michaels stories. I spend my time saying, no, I want to encourage you. I want to, attract you to this. And when there is so much noise coming from what I think of as very, kindergarten level thinking as far as the ketogenic diet goes, I see it as it's just a distraction and a waste of my time. But if you don't address it, you lose a lot of people because they hear it and say, "Oh, you can have an argument for that."
That little noise around the internet or the noise on the TV where somebody says one little bad thing about it without getting the backstory of how it really is. That's the part that I really don't like about media, is that they give you a snippet just for you to be able to click, and that click means money to them. So they want the click. They're going to give you that. They're going to trigger that emotion, and they're going to trigger that hate. And yet it's a really disservice, because we have really good information on how it's healing people with cancer. It's helping people, diabetics. It's helping seizures. And they're not even going to get a chance. If they hear one little negative thing about it, they're not even going to get a chance, get past that fear of learning more about it and how it could help them.
Right. I have a really good story from this week too, where a woman had written in and said, "I read your book. I read about how you helped your mom with cancer. My mom and she's helping her mom. My mom and I are doing this together." And she went to the nutritionist who said, You can't stress your body out with a change in diet. And I wish I could just hug her and say, no, 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 don't do that. The purpose, I mean, one of the best summaries that I've had, as I continue to gather stories and, practice delivering information to say, what is a sticky story? What sticks with patients? What do they remember?
Yeah.
I've said, when it comes to why did this ketogenic diet work for my mom? What really you do when you lower the sugars in a ketogenic diet and you raise the ketones in a ketogenic diet is you do stress the body.
Yeah.
You stress the body, and your healthy cells will flex their system to adapt to that glucose and use the ketones. But the broken cells, those ones that have cancer, they cannot flex that much. They will do their best to wiggle around and try to live in that environment and just make it through until you give up.
But Selma says, yeah, because chemo doesn't stress them out.
Right. When the nutritionist just said it, I was like, oh, if nothing else, I want to stress out your system in a way that makes the good cells thrive, and the ones who are not flexible, those cells that do have a break in their metabolism, which is cancer cells, they are fragile and they have programmed cell death. That is a beautiful answer for cancer.
Yeah. And so let me just remind the audience who you are. I know we always have new people tuning in every Sunday because not everybody catches us every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. But if you're new, this is Dr. Annette Bosworth. She's an internal medicine physician. My name is Jennifer. I am a professional blogger, keto queen of recipes. I can make food taste amazing and be keto friendly. And we just teamed up together because she has coached me through a weight loss stall. I've been on this journey myself for 2 years, and I know you've studied it a lot longer, haven't you, Dr. Boz?
Absolutely. I'm over 3.5 years into the dive, if you would. The beautiful part is how much of it I had learned, it just didn't use for 20 years. I mean, I had a dusty old biochemistry book I had to break out and say, why would my body be making those? Not quite that far, but it was pretty like, oh, I better brush up on this. But no, the internal medicine is supposed to be the geekiest doctors to answer the hard questions. So keto is perfect for this. This is my kind of deal.
Hey, speaking of hard questions, we have a question from Jennifer Johnson. It says, can being keto cause your liver enzymes to be high? She says she's never had a problem, but after blood work, they were high since being on keto. Further testing is being done, but she's just curious.
All right, so here's some things. When liver enzymes are part of the metabolism, so you are going to ask your liver to do a different skill than it's been doing. So let's go back to who is the best candidate for a ketogenic diet. I mean, I think everybody is. I think if you want a long life with a smart brain to get you to the end right before you hop in that grave, a ketogenic diet is what I recommend. And I am coaching people that are type 1 diabetics. I am coaching pregnant people, nursing moms, all about what is the science behind this way of living. But most of the people who benefit the most, the greatest improvement in their health, are those who have metabolic syndrome or pre-diabetes or insulin resistance. Now, they might not know they have that label, but as a physician, I can usually pick it out. But what happens is there are years of excessive carbohydrates, more carbohydrates than their body needed, and this resulted in weight gain. But the key organ to really deal with those excessive carbohydrates was your liver. So your liver became this place where you've heard of NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which blah, 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 who cares? No, it's actually a form of cirrhosis that you're headed to.
Oh, wow.
If your liver doesn't get a break. So the skill set that your body has been practicing, if you're on a ketogenic diet, because your sugars were high, because you've had excessive fat stored in your liver from eating carbs, not from eating fat. If that's been you, you're going to go on a ketogenic diet and we're going to ask your liver to do something different. So if she's checked her liver enzymes and you found them to be high and you're in the first few weeks of a ketogenic diet, I would tell you just wait, your liver is going to make this adjustment. And the longer you practice ketosis, the better your stress will be.
Awesome.
some of the other things that I think are really key to somebody who's got an elevated liver enzyme set is you should be checking your numbers. Not everybody on a ketogenic diet needs to be checking blood sugars or blood ketones. You can get away with urine ketone strips, and as long as you're losing weight, I wouldn't have you do anything more than that. But if your blood numbers, if your Dr. Boz ratio, if you would, is not below 40, I would want yours to be below 40 if you've got liver enzyme problems. And
so
means,
let's just remind, because people, when they say check their numbers, what does that mean? Like, let me just explain that for a little bit. So I have a ketone meter right here. It's called the 406. What she's talking about is we take our blood glucose, and we take ketone readings. And this is one of two machines that can do the same thing in one machine. There's two different strips that read those numbers, and then she works out a ratio to where you divide the glucose by the ketones to get a ratio. Anything under 80% is weight loss. Anything under 40%, you're boosting your immune system. Anything under 20%, you're fighting cancer. Was that right?
Yeah, that's a great way to. You have the slide that's got that chart that we. If you look at that, what you're really looking at is most people who eat, 50, 70, 100, or 300 carbs. If you look at the sugars along the side, those are the blood sugars. 1, 200. This is the Dr. Boz ratio, right? So you look at when you take the blood sugar and you divide the ketones into it, you get numbers that can be 150 to 200, and you look. What are we trying to predict with this ratio of dividing the glucose with your ketones? Is we're trying to measure what your insulin is. That woman's liver has got the problems it does because of too much insulin. People say, well, doc, what's my insulin? Do I need to go to the doctor to get my insulin? I'm like, no, just
that's the beauty. We can check it at home, and you can check it most of the times with this little thing.
It's absolutely. And I would contend that the approximation that this ratio gives you looking at your liver is even more valuable than the one time you're going to spend $150 to go get an insulin check by the lab. I mean, you go into the lab, you have to be fasting. And then if something's gone wrong, like you got stressed out, you were late, maybe you had a sip of coffee and you weren't supposed to, it throws everything off. And then you're going to spend another $150 to do it again. And most people won't. Most doctors won't order it again.
Yeah.
When you can do the ratios, and really this has been a big part of the hack about how do we help somebody who's at a weight loss stall, is I'm like, I need that ratio to go down. If the ratio goes down, the body will respond with weight loss on a ketogenic diet.
So our talk tonight is going to be about cholesterol, because everybody is so scared of cholesterol. Oh my God, my numbers are horrible. My numbers are going to go up. My doctor said that I can't do this. I'm on, what is it, statins? Like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It is so bad for you to do keto long term. Let's just debunk some of those things, and let's give them the science behind it, shall we?
Well, again, for the biggest question I have when people say, when I get to do this question live and I get the questions and answers back and forth, I'll ask them, so why are you checking your cholesterol? And they're like, because low cholesterol is good for your health. I'm like, wait, which health exactly are we talking about here? Because there are several studies out there that show a hearty level of cholesterol is actually a predictor of longevity and health. And they're like, what? No. You're reading the wrong stuff. You need low cholesterol to be healthy. And I'm like, are you talking about your heart? Is that what you want me to help you with? Is your heart disease? And they're like, yes, you'll die of a heart attack if you have high cholesterol. I'm like, no, let's try that again. You're right that we thought if we lowered cholesterol, we were going to improve the risk of heart attacks. This was a theory. It was thrown out there, and amazing research was put behind there to take medications to lower the cholesterol in hopes to prevent the heart attack. But I will say with 100% confidence that in 2019, there is still yet to be a study that shows the reduction in deaths by heart attack from lowering a cholesterol. The significance of lowering the cholesterol and the significance of lowering the risk of death are still not correlated in 2019. And I'll tell you, as a physician, as an internist, it took me some really careful, quiet reflection over these studies to be able to say, oh, I was duped. I mean, I was looking at what the advertisements to the drug reps would come in and say, this little bitty relative risk of reducing this number is
Mhm.
the heart attack risk. And the truth is when you backed up and you looked at the studies about, well, did it really improve their longevity? Did it improve their quality of life? Did it decrease the overall death rate? The answer was no, it did not. So going back to the person saying, all right, why are we looking at cholesterol? Oh, you want me to predict heart attack.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we have some really good things that are going to predict heart attack. Let me show you them. Number one biggest predictor of a heart attack is your insulin level. The more insulin you have in your system for the longer period of time, the higher the risk of heart attack. So there's a study out there that looks at men, and I know it's just men, but just hang with me. This is a really good study. 25 years we followed them. They did not have the diagnosis of diabetes. So you think, oh, you're talking that diabetics have heart disease. Yes, they do have lots of heart disease. But we're going to study people who don't have diabetes. And by the way, if you get diabetes, they threw them out of the study. So here they tracked them for 25 years, and they looked at a panel of lab tests from cholesterol to good cholesterol and bad cholesterol and fluffy cholesterol and testosterone and several other things. But one of the biggest predictors of a heart attack was how often was their insulin found to be high. And so when they divided this out into the 5 groups of here, these people had the lowest amount of insulin and these people had the highest amount of insulin, it was a direct link. The higher their insulin over time, the more likely they were to have a heart attack. And it was not subtle. You did not need to have a tweak of the numbers. It was a very clear correlation that if your Dr. Boz ratio, which is what insulin is high, you have a higher risk of a heart attack. This was a better predictor than cholesterol. So there's that step one. If we're predicting heart attacks, cholesterol is not your friend for the predictor. But the other part that I like people to remember is when they say, Dr. Bosworth, I heard, because there are some really great biohackers out there who've like checked their cholesterol over and over again. Dave Feldman is one of the funnest ones to watch. He's got that engineering brain, and he's really using his own body and his own experiments to look at what does cholesterol do. And they'll say, I've been watching him, and when he went on that ketogenic diet, his cholesterol went up. And I'm like, yes, it did. And that is okay. And if you look, he really does unpack this well. So if you haven't checked him out or watched his blogs or his videos, they're very informative, because he talks about how when you put fat in your body, you need to move the fat around. And those little carriers that move fat, because our blood is water soluble. So cholesterol or fat it needs a protector. It needs a little casing to circulate in our system. And those casings are called cholesterol. So when you put more fat in your body, when you eat higher fat, the cholesterol is going to go up. But the predictor of a heart attack does get better if you increase that fat in the setting of low carbohydrates. And that has been what Dave Feldman has done just a wonderful job of outlining, of educating patients, and really being able to use his own system to say, yeah, this is how it works and this is how your body will respond. So that might be a little bit long explanation, but I think it's a powerful teaching moment that when you want to predict what your cholesterol is going to do, the number of ships that are going to carry fat around your body are going to rise. That is what happens when you eat a high-fat diet. But the number of triglycerides are going to go down, and those are also a very powerful predictor of heart disease. So those go less, and the healthy cholesterol rises. And again, that is a predictor for when the healthy cholesterol is lower. That was another very good predictor of a heart attack. So the good cholesterol rises, the triglycerides sink, and that is protective against a heart attack.
Awesome. Well, just in case we have a lot of viewers on right now. So I would like to say that if you are just starting keto, you don't know where to begin, maybe you're thinking about it. First of all, Dr. Boz wrote a book called Any Way You Can, and it's her own journey of how she helped her mom battle through cancer. And it just gives you the story, but it also gives you the science behind every single step that she took, why she did what she did. So yes, it's a beautiful story, but you will gain so much knowledge just on the keto diet that I highly recommend it. And we can throw the link in here in the notes real quick. The other thing I would like to say is that if you do want to start keto and you don't know where to begin, go to switch2keto.com and I will give you a cheat sheet that will give you a massive amount of references from meal plans, food, starting grocery lists, names of sugars. Did you know there's 61 names of sugars that you need to know? Did you, let me just tell you, I've been doing this journey for 2 years. I've made every mistake that you as a beginner will make. And let me just save you some trouble. There's the sheet. Download it. You got to put your email. That's my own personal email list. We won't spam you. Put your email in there, confirm it, and it'll automatically shoot to your email inbox. And it's a nice reference sheet for you to get started.
Mm-hmm. You know, the fake sugars and sugars that are out there continue to grow. And I have a couple of patients who have journeyed into using a continuous glucose monitor to test them. Have you ever seen this done before?
Oh my gosh. It kind of freaks me out. I had a friend who had one stick right here, continuous. What does it stay in for, like 2 weeks?
Yep, 14 days.
Yeah.
Yep.
The thought of something sticking in you and you, like, I sleep on my side, so I would be a little, I don't know that I would sleep, but I kind of want to try it.
It's unbelievable. It's so fun for them to biohack themselves. I mean, they're pretty interested in their health. And when I said, poke your finger, they were like, okay. And they did it a few times. But what has happened is they've come to a place where they're stalling out and they're just not very good about checking their sugars. So I'm like, here's the deal. With a prescription, you can get this little device. And so we actually put it in together and got her started. And she said, so I'm trying out all these keto foods. And one of the keto foods was, it had, I think it said 35 grams of carbs.
30!
That's one fruit snack, gummy bears, but it's keto friendly. It had 29 grams of soluble fiber. And so, of course, it's that net carb thing, people playing that little trick. And she goes, oh my gosh, Dr. Boz, I took this. I didn't even eat the whole snack. But I checked my sugar at the 15 to 30 minutes. He's like, I could totally feel that something was up, because I was like,
yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
And she goes, 40 points in my sugar. And it was at 30 minutes. And she goes, and then I stopped looking because I'm like, oh, I don't even want to know, but I know I should never eat those again. You're like,
oh my gosh. But that's a real thing. There's some things that say it's keto friendly and it's not. Like, that's a real, we're already struggling for all these names of sugar. We already know watch out for all these ingredients. We don't even know the names of half of them. And then they tell us it's keto friendly and it's not. It's the most frustrating thing. Yeah.
And there's a great list of saying, oh, here's the sweetness level. Here's the part that should spike your insulin. And these studies are done on humans. They're not like animal studies and they're extrapolating the data. They're done on human studies. But what I tell patients is, do your own study.
Yeah.
If you're super insulin resistant and you take monk fruit, which is supposed to not give you a very big high response to the glucose or to the sweetness, your sugar shouldn't change much if you listen to the studies. But I have had patients who they took it and they said, boy, I don't feel good afterwards. And I'm like, well, that's probably a sign. Let's check your sugar. And by golly, they had a pretty significant 20 to 30 point rise in their sugar after using it. And you say, well, that's not what the studies say. I'm like, yeah, but that's your chemistry.
Yeah.
And isn't that more important than what the what the study was looking at.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the beauty too, because I run a group called Low Carb Inspirations plus Keto Friendly Recipes. We have about 177,000 people in there. And just because monk fruit doesn't affect one person doesn't mean it couldn't affect somebody else. So this is where the testing with that glucose monitor, you're going to figure out the puzzle within your own system. And that's the beauty of it, right?
Right. And that it was such a teaching moment for them. The response of somebody trying to figure this out and then getting stuck. When they get stuck, they give up. They're like, it's not for me. I tried that diet. It didn't work. But if you can empower them with the feedback loop that's very tight or short is what I call it, meaning here's your data and here's your feedback. When you come to see the physician, thanks to your insurance and thanks to the way the cost has been so prohibitive, I'm going to check your cholesterol 2 to 3 times a year if we're being really good. That's not a way to give you feedback on changing behavior. That's too far apart. Checking your sugar, checking your insulin level with that Dr. Boz ratio is a powerful teaching unit to say, yesterday you had a glass of red wine. What are your sugars today? Or monk fruit, what did your sugars turn into? What did it do to your ketones? Oh my goodness, that melts all of the noise of what is it, what could it be? So I love that.
So are you telling me that you're going to prescribe me, because you guys remember, we're in a doctor-patient relationship. We're just doing this online so you all can see and learn from this whole journey and all my mistakes. So are you going to prescribe me one of those? And I'm going to...
I would highly recommend it, actually. So because here's the puzzle that for those of you that are joining us, Jennifer reached out saying I'm in a plateau. And I'm like, oh, Jennifer, you happen to land in this month where I really thank God that I answered that email. And there were 500 other ones that month saying, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? And I said yes to Jennifer saying, let's do it online, because there are so many people asking the exact same question that if we unpack this together on a journey, it's not just going to help Jennifer. It's going to help all of the people that watch. And that is the beauty of 2018-19 healthcare delivery. We have a classroom that we can impact by doing positive things and really helping people. So here we walked through and we have our journey going forward, and she's doing great, but she ran into a hiccup. And that was she started having hot flashes, blood test a month or so after we said, oh, it was an infection. And then we kind of played around and said, all right, we better do some blood tests. And sure enough, her body was trying to go through menopause. And we said, can we help her not do this? And we're still not sure on the answer on that yet, but we're trying it. And we did push her to do a little longer kind of window of fasting every day. But I think it would be very valuable even if we only got to use the meter for because the meter costs around $80, but the device that goes in the arm, the 2-week sensor, is still another $40. So it's about $130 or $140 commitment. Okay. But that's 2 weeks of a constant check of your sugar. I mean, the way you check your sugar is you take the device and you just wave it over your arm and it tells you your sugar. It is so cool. And so we could really do a few experiments, like say, what does your body do to monk fruit? What does your body do to when you have, when you fast? Does a salt tablet increase your sugar? It shouldn't, but it's like, who would check? I wouldn't waste the strip and time and blood to check it.
No.
But if there, I might peak. So I think it's worth it.
I'd be worth it. I can be the experimental person, and I can totally write down all of my food consumptions and alcohol consumptions and salt consumptions and see what it does. Why not?
Well, it is a powerful thing, because I can remember one of the first things we tackled was the sleep problems. Really, John was having more struggles than you. And people think, oh yeah, she's not listening to me. They're talking about my sleep. I came here to talk about weight loss. They're like, oh, you can't, I can't possibly connect with you. How integrated the way your body handles stress and the way your body resets every night from stress. And that link to what your sugars are going to do and how you feel. I know I say this probably 200 times a week, but it really is connected. And until they can say, look, you were doing really good with your ketogenic diet. And I mean, I think John has even done really great with his weight loss. So it's
Yes.
not really that he had the signal that he stalled out on his weight, or it really was, we were looking at his sugars, when his sugars got high when he didn't sleep well, and his ketones went down when he didn't sleep well. And you're like, well, what did that? And it's the sleep related to the cortisol, related to the stress level. And people think you're chirping, blah, blah, blah. She's talking again about something I don't care about. I'm like, no, 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 no. You want to care about this. But a continuous glucose monitor is this little trick inside their body chemistry. And it's great. It's great. I mean, so I would love to. I will write that prescription and get that ordered for you. And
well, let's do it. You guys will have to tune in. We do this show every Sunday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I don't know how quickly we'll get that. I don't know when we'll start, but it sounds like maybe in a couple weeks we might do that. Hey, we have a question from Mary Ford. She said, with the strips, how long after eating would it show the results on the strips? Is that the blood strips or is that the urine strips? I'm guessing the blood strips.
Right. So let's just, because I had that question again this week, and there was a couple with the chirping about keto, talking about urine strips versus blood strips. So let's just make sure. Remember, with the urine strips, I don't so much look at the dark level or the light level when I'm looking at a urine strip. I think of it as a plus or a minus. Are there ketones in your urine or are there not? And you can look at the darkness and feel some placebo effect if you want. Good job. Own it. But really what it's looking at is, has your system in the last 6 hours had a time where there were ketones enough in your circulation that you spilled some into your urine? Let me tell you a great example of a trap of a patient who has MS. So we're doing a ketogenic diet for their brain. And he's walking along, and he has not bought his ketone meter at this point. He is still using the urinary test strips. So he does really well, fasts for about 10 hours a day, has black coffee now, was doing really well. And then he would say, doc, I can drink orange juice. Still, I know, and still pee ketones.
I know.
Of course, I'm like, my eyes are like soothing, like, okay. I'm like, talk to me about that. He goes, I get up in the morning. I go to the, I go to the bathroom for the first time, but then I get up, I have my little glass of orange juice. And about an hour later, I go to the bathroom again. So what happens is the urine that your body makes is, he isn't emptying his bladder all the way, first of all. So his urine was collecting ketones from when he was fasting. He would break his fast. I proved it with the glucometer and with the ketone meter right there in the office, where he said, I just had it 20 minutes ago and I just peed a ketone that was pink. I'm like, but look what your sugar just did. So again, it comes back to that same thing where I'm like, if I check your cholesterol 3 times a year, I'm probably not going to change your behavior very much. But if you check your ketones and your blood glucose 20 minutes after you drink that orange juice, I'm telling you, that is going to shove your ketones down and push your glucose up, period. That is what happens. But with the urine strips, it's this, think of the bag of reservoir that's holding the urine. That's what you're checking. So it's got this history of time that you don't get to have. You can make that urine ketone strip say what you want if you play the game right.
Oh, all about hacking the system.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. Did we answer her question?
I
said something like, how long?
What was the best time to check glucose ketones?
Okay, so glucose ketones, if you're trying to do monk fruit, like you're saying, did my body respond to the sugar substitute? You want to give time for absorption. So when people take it and then like 3 or 4 minutes later they check their numbers, I'm like, yeah, your body's good, but it's probably not that good. So if you think of swallowing the substance, whether it's a coffee drink or whether you put it in a dessert or something, and then you give it 30 minutes. There's 2 phases that I would encourage patients to check. I would look at the peak, which is going to be somewhere between 30 minutes and 45 minutes after they've eaten. This gives the stomach time to get the food in it, but then also absorb it. And then you're going to track to see how did it turn out at an hour. and specifically how did it look at 2 hours, because you should be back down to your normal blood sugar. And if you're looking at a monk fruit, it shouldn't increase the sugar more than 5 points. It should be a stable sugar. And I've found that not to be as predictable. Like if my patient is very insulin resistant, like they've had the extra 100 pounds on for the better part of a decade, and now they have a sugar substitute, their body responds differently than other people, than I was expecting.
So if and what you're saying is if my glucose was like 85 and I had some monk fruit, and it should only be at the most 95, or I mean 90.
Yeah, well, 90, 95 would be normal, provided the rest of this was a low carb meal.
Yeah.
I mean, usually the sugar substitute is there to give you the sweetness, and there isn't any other carbs, or very few, in the food. So that would be the part where I'd be looking at saying, well, what else was in it? Because if you're just measuring monk fruit and you're just taking a spoonful of it, that would be the best way to test it, that there's nothing else getting noisy in the way. But if you're saying, I have this amazing red velvet cake that you have.
Yes, I made that for Valentine's Day, and it is an amazing red velvet cake.
Yeah, I swear to God, the only reason you have trouble losing weight is because you're such a good cook.
I know.
Like, I don't have any of those problems, but I cannot do that.
I know.
But you say, I really want to test what is my body's response to that. And you just take a teaspoon of that, put it on your tongue, check it at 30 minutes, and check it at an hour. It shouldn't go more than 10 points. 5 points would be like, I'd give you 5 points. But boy, if it goes up 10 points, that's a response. And I wouldn't, it doesn't mean you can't have it. It just means you're going to increase your sugar, which is
there's a lot of people, first of all, they don't like sticking their fingers. And then you're asking them to stick their fingers at 30 minutes, and then again at an hour, and then again at 2 hours. That's like 3 strips, and they're not cheap either. So it's like, if you guys, and then I could test it for me, and it could be different for you. So it's almost, it really is, I also go by feeling, I forget what product it was. There was a keto friendly product that I tried. Golly, I'm not really good at talking bad about keto products either. I just don't talk about them. But there was one product that I ate. It was a long time ago, but it gave me an upset stomach. It just made me feel a little bloated. And that was a huge sign already, without testing any blood. If it made me feel a little weird, it was off the charts.
Right. Well, yeah. That's the one thing that I really have been impressed by with these continuous glucose monitors is the gal that I was just talking about a little bit ago. She said, yeah, I had that in the gummy bear thing. And she goes, and I could feel that I didn't feel good. That she actually had a real live cake, like not keto cake, like a real live thing. She goes, I woke up the next morning and I felt nauseous. And so, but what was helpful for her is it totally correlated with an increase in her sugar.
Yeah.
And she had the swelling back. She said, oh, that did not take long.
There are so many people that talk about, oh, I cheated last night, or it was a birthday, or it was this. And they're like, I'll never do that again. I was sick for 3 days. I was in the bathroom. I was like doubled over in pain. That just goes to show you what carbs and sugar do to your body, especially when you detoxed it and cleaned it for so long. I'm terrified. I watched your show with Lachlan, and she mentioned bread, and I'm like, I look at that as like pure evil now. Like I can't even look at a piece of bread. It won't go towards my lips because I'm like, that's poison.
Right. And the truth is that there are so many people that have no idea how much better they could feel.
Yeah.
But they probably still feel the swelling or the bloating from the food. They just blame it on a lot of other things. And then they don't have this space where they feel good as the comparison. So they almost can't find that joy of the lack of those symptoms. They always have those other bloating symptoms.
Oh yeah, for sure. So do you want me to pull up that cholesterol slide at all? Do we want to go through that, or what do you want to do?
I think that the cholesterol one, just showing, it's a great example to kind of bring full closure of what your numbers did.
Okay. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah, that'd be great. I got to put on my glasses. Yes, there you go. So this is good because this was 2013. 2016, and then it was about a month before we met, which was August of 2018. And you were keto on this last cholesterol, that August 2018, but you were not keto in 2013. And I can't remember, maybe it was right at the cusp when you were starting in 2016. Is that right?
Yes.
No, 2017. No.
Oh, that's right. In 2017.
That's when you started. Because
yes,
it's 19 and you've just made it to the 2-year mark, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So both of those first two are your low fat times, and the third one is your low carb.
That's
so
right.
What my brain instantly does is I look at the HDL to triglyceride ratio and just look at your HDL. So when you were low fat, your HDL, your healthy cholesterol, was 63 and then 59. And when you look at your high fat time, when you're keto, that HDL is 85. That is so powerful to say. You are moving food around. You are moving that fat from into the cells, repairing cells, delivering it to the different parts of your body. And that HDL is a huge scavenger that you continue to recycle during that time. I look at the triglycerides of the 177, and I would contend that you fasted longer for the first two, as opposed to how long you fasted for the August 2018 one. Now, when I see a triglyceride that goes up on keto, it's almost always associated with either they didn't respect their fast as much as I would have asked them to, like they had, whether it's a sugar-free coffee or something before they had their blood tested. So I would challenge you to say, I wonder if we could go back to time and really study how long you fasted before that August 2018 draw versus the other two.
I don't think I've ever fasted for a draw. I haven't. No, nobody ever asked me to. So
it's a really common mistake in medicine, and you're just like, okay.
They just take my blood. I have never been asked to fast taking those blood numbers. Never.
Sometimes medicine is just, it's got all these messy human beings in it.
I know.
Doctors. So if we check your cholesterol again, we are totally going to give you at least a 12-hour fast before you do that. And I would contend that we would be really strict about that 5 o'clock rule that you've been doing, where you did salt until the 5 a.m. in the morning. I would absolutely do that with the next time we checked your cholesterol. So it wouldn't be a bad idea if we were going to just kind of do this little experiment that we check your cholesterol. And then we do, my favorite tests to look at are something called a highly sensitive C reactive protein. So this is if you could look down the tunnel of an artery, if the inflammation on the inside of the artery is on fire, that predicts a heart attack.
Oh.
Highly sensitive C reactive protein is one of those little markers that's found on the inside lining. Like, think of it as the skin on the inside of the artery. And when it's inflamed, that number rises.
Tanya said it's time to redo my tests. Yeah, I think so.
What I would do is the 3-month report card for your sugars. So that's called the hemoglobin A1C. And we look at your red blood cells, and we look at how much sugar is stuck to them, how much glucose is stuck to them. And when the sugars have been low, those red blood cells are pretty clean from any extra sugars. When you've had excessive diabetes, high sugars, then the red blood cells have sticky glucoses to them. So it'd be good to check it.
I had somebody to asking to put up the Dr. Boz ratio again. So I'm just going to put that up again real quick. This just shows the insulin versus or the glucose versus the ketones, and when you divide it, you get those ratios. And
the best
basically,
way I would summarize it, is when the Dr. Boz ratio goes down, the insulin goes down. So if you look at this chart, the 3 big numbers that I like to encourage patients are the 80, the 40, and the 20. And if you look at that chart, it's on the tail little end of that graph. If their Dr. Boz ratio is less than 80, you're going to be in a weight loss zone. There's hardly anybody who can't lose weight when in that 80 or less zone. I really like it when they check it first thing in the morning is their blood sugar and their blood glucose, because it gives me the best peek into their liver and how well their liver emptied overnight. If somebody has a metabolic problem, like they've got an immune system that's not working right, or they've had like psoriasis, they've had an immune system that's overtaxed, like they're trying to get over an infection, I will push that Dr. Boz ratio to 40 or less. And the other thing that I'm really confident about when they hit a 40 or less is that they've ignited autophagy. So I have a goal, a personal goal for 2019, that I will fast starting every Sunday, and I will fast until I get to a ratio of 40 or less every week for the year of 2019. And then I'll go back to a ketogenic way of living. But what that's doing is I am igniting autophagy, which is this ability for my body to recycle. Think of it as the stress we talked about earlier, where cancer cells are not going to respond. My body's ability to respond to that lower glucose and higher ketones, the healthiest cells are going to do a better job. And the damaged cells are going to have programmed cell death. Recycling those damaged cells is what autophagy would do. I can't do a blood test to measure if somebody's in autophagy, but we can make a pretty good guesstimate by using this ratio. If it's at 40 or less, we're pretty sure you're in autophagy. If it's at 20 or less, I really only do this with people who are under medical supervision. Like they're doing something where we call it a press pulse cycle for cancer, is what I used it for with my mother. But I've had other people they're on a seizure protocol, and we really are trying to get those seizures to absolutely stop. And we're trying to get that Dr. Boz ratio to 20 or less every day for 2 months. And man, you want to see a mental health problem improve. That is powerful. But you don't have to push it all the way to a 20. Please don't do that without working with a doctor. It's a very low. Like, can you think of how often you've hit 20, Jennifer?
Oh gosh, that's kind of rare.
It is. Like Grandma Rose can do it, and that's my mom, because she's perfected this. But boy,
it's really difficult.
It really is. So
it's uncomfortable. Let's just be honest. It's Grandma Rose is like a champion. That girl is a rock star because
Mary Poppins, absolutely. She's got magic, flows through her blood. She's like, oh, wherever you go, man, it's a lot. It's really hard. So if you do that, it's not that it's not very scientifically sound. It's a really powerful stress to your system, a healthy stress. But you might want to be working with a doctor.
Yeah. Hey, we have a question here from Brenda. It says, if you have a hurt knee or shoulder, does it affect your C reactive protein?
Okay, so here's the difference: is you just used the word C reactive protein, and that's what she wrote in. C reactive protein is a much it's a different marker than the highly sensitive C reactive protein. You'll know you have the right one because the highly sensitive C reactive protein is much more expensive. C reactive protein is kind of like an inflammatory marker that is common with, like, a SED rate would be the same marker, where it's much more general in the whole system. So if you have knees that are really kind of on the, bone to bone, or lots of arthritis, you can see it raise your C reactive protein, your CRP, but it hardly impacts the highly sensitive C reactive protein unless that arthritis is affecting the blood vessels to your knee. And of course, that's a higher level of inflammation. It's a higher tax on your body. So really think of highly sensitive C reactive protein as, I get to look down that blood vessel. I get to study the skin on the inner lining of the blood vessel. And is it on fire? Is it inflamed? And that's the difference between C reactive protein and highly sensitive C reactive protein. They're like two different animals.
So let's talk a little bit about that Dr. Boz ratio. Laura says, is that 40 ratio or less, does it have to be in the morning, or can it be in the afternoon too?
So in my personal journey, I will start fasting. Like I had breakfast this morning around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And I'm fasted. I've had only water and salt the rest of the day. And I will wake up tomorrow morning and I will check to see if my ratio is there. Personally, I want to hit that 40 ratio, and I will fast until I get there. So most of the time, if I start my fasting at 9 o'clock on a Sunday, I can get there by tomorrow morning. But for my personal goal, if I catch the 40 after 7 p.m. at night, I don't count it. And it's really because the purpose of the ratio is then you can eat. And so if I hit it after 7 p.m., I try to say, okay, I know that it would be easy to eat right now, but the most powerful predictor of autophagy is the one in the morning.
So I remember I did a long fast and I checked my numbers. I try not to eat past 4 or 5, and I checked it at 7. And I ate. I didn't care. I was hungry. Some days I can do it better than others, and some days I'm just like, screw it. This is real life. I just can't do it. I don't know why.
I got to tell you one quick story. So there was a gal who did their first fast. She's almost 60 years old. First fast, gets all the way. She's like, I know you told me that once you're ketogenic, you're not going to have a hunger when you're fasting. And I write about this in the book. Like, I don't even mention this at the early starts of keto because they think I'm crazy. They think that's not possible. Never been anybody who misses a meal. I'm like, I know. So she says, I got to 60 hours and I just couldn't believe how well I felt. And she goes, I really wasn't hungry. I had done your little salt trick. I mean, 60 hours was amazing. And she goes, so then she made it to the 72-hour mark. And she goes, the really thing that bothered me the most was I was not hungry. I totally ate because it was time to eat, but I was not hungry.
She could have gone on longer. Wow. Well, look at this. Gloria Gross says, I just ended a 69-hour fast and my ratio was 32. Wow. She says she's dealing with chronic pain from a bad back. Is that why I can't get my numbers lower? Is that the cortisol?
Yeah. Well, so the pain will be there, but I will tell you one of the best ways to reset the conduction of the nerve. Remember, one of the first ways that ketogenic diet was studied was for brains and how it slowed down those seizures that were conducting electricity when they shouldn't have been. So when you look at a chronic pain syndrome and people say, why do you recommend a ketogenic diet in a chronic pain syndrome? And it has everything to do with the improved conduction of that nerve the longer they bathe that nerve in ketones. So I would say those numbers are amazing. That's great. You get much past 72 hours fasting and you can start to have some, it's a higher stress. I mean, I'm just looking at the photograph that's associated with that picture and guessing that she's above the age of 50. That is my 50 and older, outside of the time when they're trying to die from cancer, like what happened to my mom in the book, I really say 72 hours is as long as I would ask them to go. And if your body isn't getting a ratio, whatever you got to in those 72 hours, that's good enough. You'll get better at it as you practice. So don't fast much past 72 hours over the age of 50, unless you're working with a doctor and you can help supplement to not have a lot of that breakdown of the muscle. So,
and let's just talk about that salt trick because it is a lifesaver when you're trying to fast. Get the rock pink Himalayan salt. Yep. Whenever you feel the slightest bit of hunger come on, just pop one of those in your mouth, suck on it a little bit. The hunger will go away. It's got tons of minerals. It's going to help you. We have a question here. Can I drink bone broth while fasting?
So here's the rules with bone broth. Again, fasting is a learned skill. If you look at fasting, the first probably 4 months that I did fasting, I had really salty bone broth. I mean, I love the bone broth that my mom makes. She uses real chicken feet. It's absolutely nourished, very nutrient dense. And there was something about that warm liquid that was so satisfying. I would sit down to the supper table, my family would be eating, and I could sip on that and get through the temptation of the other people eating. Now, I'm sure if I looked at my response to that I probably had a little bit of a response, of a glucose response to it, but I kept it to 1/4 of a cup. And whenever I felt that wave of hunger, I used bone broth. So I have several of my folks over the age of 50 that I just say, keep doing that, keep doing that. If you're really in a critical phase of healthcare where, like, take Grandma Rose, she used bone broth for her 40-day fast that she did. But she was facing death. I mean, she has had a cancer and a problem that was so critical that we couldn't afford another option. So personally, I used bone broth for the first several months before I got really strong in my skills of how can I fast without using that crutch. And I didn't have any guilt about that. It was a healthy, small amount of highly salted, nutrient dense material. And that's what I needed to kind of advance my skill of being able to say no. So the answer to that is yes, you can do it. Do I think that a salt and water fast only is better? I do, but don't let that be the ultimate goal without really mastering that feeling of success before you step into that salt and water only.
Yeah, the salt it's a lifesaver. I don't think I could have done it without the salt. I carry it with me. I travel with salt still to this day. So I have to read this comment, and it's a rather long one, so I don't think I can put it up on the screen. But this is exactly why Dr. Boz and I spend an hour of our time every Sunday, is to help so many people. We just want to be real, be vulnerable. We want to talk about what's in. We want to help you. We want to inspire you. But Beth, I just have to say this. Beth says, I so appreciate the two of you. Your superpowers are inspirational, informational, and encouragement. You make such a difference. Thank you. Well, thank you for tuning in, Beth. And then she says, do you break your fast immediately when you hit the 40 ratio? Best food to break the fast. She said this a little bit ago, and we kind of already answered that. But what is the best food to break a fast? Because you can't just dive right in either.
Right. I actually use bone broth. That's what I break my fast with, is I use the bone broth to break my fast.
Now, do you do it like 30 minutes ahead of time? You have a little bit and then you have a meal, or how much time do you give?
I usually sip on it while I'm cooking. So it's something that probably, 15 to 20 minutes. If I can make it 30, that's great. But the key really is especially when I would do the 72-hour fasts, your kind of GI, your gut needs that kind of a slight wake up before you really ask it to do a lot of secretion. And that's what your gut is there for, is to secrete that substance to help the absorption of food. If you've not had anything in your gut for 72 hours, those cells shut down, which is what you're trying to do. This is the whole point that you're doing this for, is take a break and then reignite again. So
what happens? I don't want to say.
You'll know. You'll be in the toilet. You'll go. Yeah, you'll get the squirts.
So what happened to me is I actually threw up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was something that I couldn't take it, and I had to go throw up before I felt better. Like, it didn't even go down. Like and it was strawberries of all things. My daughter had some strawberries, and I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I normally do break it, very gently. And strawberries, that's not easy. That's not an easy food. But I took some, and then I took another, and then I took another, and I was like, whoa, oh my God, I don't feel good.
Right. So that's a big deal. That's a powerful teaching moment too, that, you'll learn your own system. Like I've had some times where I know it was hard for me, and then I didn't eat until that night. But the first thing I wanted a glass of wine. Like, if I'm going to put carbs in, I was going to have a glass of wine.
Yes.
To break your fast with a glass of wine. A hot idea. So I didn't do that anymore.
What happened? I can also imagine that probably got you drunk like 5 times faster too. But did it?
You're happy. I'm like, because talk about this thing about having a hormone surges, that like growth hormone and estrogen and a little dopamine. And I'll tell you, my husband really likes it when I do 72-hour fasts. Guess what? I made it 72 hours.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you are a rock star for making it 72 hours. I have a little bit of a situation going on. My husband thinks that I'm at the perfect weight right now. He really doesn't want me to lose any more weight. I think he likes the little junk in the trunk, and I'm like, it's got to go. It's got to go. And he's like, no, you're perfect already. Like, here, have this. He goes, I'm going to feed you a Twinkie in your sleep. And I'm like, no, you're not.
So it's called a happy marriage. He's doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's just I need his encouragement to keep me going, because sometimes it's easier. Like, we went to the lake this weekend, and I was totally just no tracking. I still keto. Like, we brought steaks and butter and asparagus and whatnot. So we always do keto. That's not the problem. But I wasn't worried about time when I ate. We had some vodka, like whatever. It wasn't worried. So when he doesn't encourage me like that, I'm like, oh, it's too easy, like to say, oh, screw 5 o'clock, It's
And I really think that's the beauty of what fits in your life. And you've done a great job of being the example of saying, look, she doesn't want to do 72-hour fast, and you don't have to, as long as you're biohacking. And I really am going to be excited to see what this 14-day tracking device is going to look like. I think you can understand your body well enough, and there's grace. It's not like, oh my gosh, I didn't hit 40. I'm not going to lose any weight today. That's not that strict. There's a zone of your metabolism is enhanced, and every week you do this, your mitochondria gets stronger, and that is the weight loss over time.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to test it out and see what the numbers do and hack what we need to hack and figure it out, and that way everybody else can know too.
Great.
All right, well, we're at the top of the hour. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for tuning in. Gosh, this was a good conversation today. Cholesterol's always, an interesting conversation. Hormones, cholesterol. Anyway, don't forget, tune in next Sunday. We'll see you later. Have a great evening, everybody.
Good night.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.